Perhaps the most interesting principle in data mesh to me is this idea of treating your data as a product, that each team has data that it's going to make available to the rest of the organization. And that data has to be well structured, has to be high quality, and it has to be usable by other teams in ways you expect, sure, but also in ways you can't predict. If you do it right, then data as a product frees up other teams to build their systems without having to explicitly coordinate with you. They can just take the data and process it for purposes that you don't have to foresee or explicitly help with. Done right, data is the thing that can decouple teams. But doing it right's the trick, isn't it? And that's the subject of today's podcast. Joining me today on streaming audio is Florian Albrecht, who's the lead architect of the German parcel delivery company Hermes. He's been finding some practical ways to help their teams open up their data, to maximize the amount they can cooperate without having to coordinate. They've been using a mixture of training, event storming sessions, and a new software tool they've been working on called Galapagos, plus a little bit of benevolent monitoring. Before we begin, streaming audio is brought to you by our education site, Confluent Developer, and our cloud service for Apache Kafka, Confluent Cloud. More about both of those at the end, but for now, I'm your host, Kris Jenkins. This is Streaming Audio. Let's get into it. Joining me today is Florian Albrecht. Florian, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So you are a solutions architect at Hermes in Germany, right?
Correct.
And they're the big logistics package delivery company.
Exactly.
Are you just based in Germany, or is it more wider across Europe?
We are mainly based in Germany. We have some associated companies in Europe, but our main focus is Germany.
Exactly. Okay. And you've been there, so I read your bio, you've been writing Java since 1999, which...
From the beginning.
That's something any recruiter would aim for on a CV, right?
Yeah, possibly.
But you're relatively newer to event-driven architectures. You've been doing that. This has been part of a move in Hermes, right?
Exactly. I only encountered it starting at Hermes in 2019, and then I got known to the idea of event-driven architecture.
Okay. And over the past 3 years, you've been developing something called Galapagos, right?
Exactly.
So tell me what that is. What's it trying to solve?
Yeah, when we started with event-driven architecture at Hermes, we relatively quickly discovered that Kafka would be a good technical solution for implementing a company-wide event-driven architecture. But after some tests, we saw that we would need some rules and guidelines to have really event-driven architecture. So Kafka itself is really good for what it's doing, but it has a really technical focus. And we as architects had a more application focus with all the enterprise architecture in mind and so on, and who communicates with whom and why. And so we created some rules and guidelines and said, okay, that's the way how we should use Kafka to really make the most out of it in terms of event-driven architecture. And as we are really agile company with really many agile teams, autonomous teams, we saw that it's not a good idea to just write some rules and guidelines on the wall and hope that everyone adheres to it. So we had the idea of creating a software to enforce, first of all, to enforce these rules and guidelines, but also to help the teams using Kafka. So really basic, starting with getting your API keys and something to access Kafka to really get the connection data, configuration stuff, but then also to create topics and subscribe topics, browse topics, see what's there, and in the background enforce all these rules and guidelines. So we are happy as architects, and the teams are happy, so they don't have to deal with all these rules and guidelines and still get what they need for their daily work.
Right. So you're encoding these rules as software to make it easy for people to stay on the rails.
Exactly.
Yeah. So give me an example. What's a rule that you're trying to guide people towards?
Yeah, one of the central rules is that we will want to talk about events, not data. So previously, many applications at Hermes copied just data from one point to the other point, perhaps changed the data a little bit, then copied it to the next application, and so on. And in the end, nobody knew, yeah, when did the data change and why, and why does it look like it's looking now? And that's especially bad if you have some complaints from customers who want to know, why did my parcel got there and not to me? Um, and then we have to check every application, where did the address change and whatever.
Right.
And the first rule is use events. Events are immutable. If you create an event and say the address changed, that's true. That's true in itself. So the address of a parcel changed is an event which you can publish. You can copy it. It has a timestamp. It has some other basic information, and of course also the address. So all the data is also in there, but it's enclosed in this event envelope, if you want so. So you can copy it, and you are safe. Immutable objects are great. Every developer knows this because you can safely copy them. And this is the first rule we want to enforce. So the teams, and it's really not easy for the teams to switch their minds from data to events. So most of the time, they need a little guidance from the software, but sometimes also from ourselves. Let's talk about events. What are the business events in your domain? And that's what's one of the items which Galapagos enforces and encourages.
Okay. So what else do you do to get those ideas across? I mean, is it just on software, or are you trying to educate the developers as well?
Yeah, we have to, definitely. So the software itself is nice to have, and many teams have a good start using the software, especially if they want just to read events, consume them. But when it really comes to creating events and so on, thinking in them, we often make workshops with the teams to get them known to the concepts. And we make so-called event storming workshops.
Oh yeah.
And really explain our concepts. And so we have a 1 to 2 hour workshops with the teams, which each team really to answer all their questions and get them known to the concepts. And that's really important. Communication is everything for an architect. So,
yeah, it's your main tool for actually getting these ideas across, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, because I sometimes think the thing with event-driven architectures is that the technology is kind of simple, it's quite graspable, but thinking about how you solve problems in a different way, thinking of the world as not a collection of mutable objects, but something else, is sometimes the hardest part.
Exactly, yes.
How have you found it's gone, like teaching people these ideas? What's been the sticking points?
Depends. It really depends from team to team. We have some teams which directly get the idea and say, "Yeah, that's why didn't we work all the time this way?" And we have some teams, mainly where it's really technical data they are shifting now, where it's really hard to get the idea of getting these 2 to 3 levels up to think in business events. What's really the business thing? What's happening here? Because they have some scan from a scanner on some kind of belt where the parcels are shipped, and getting that to the business behind what's really happening here. That's the hard part. So this is but it's also, on the other hand, it's really cool because our business now also gets into the discussion. Now we discuss about business events. So it's not just the developers, but also business has now an opinion about this. What's happening there? It's we can now talk to them. Is this really a parcel revolution or some other things? We have mainly German names for these events, and so on, and they can answer this. They cannot answer this if this field has a correct format or something like that, but what's happening on the business side, they can really give answers to this, and this is really helpful. This really gets our teams on the next level.
Okay, so you're also using it as a way to get the different parts of the business to communicate.
Yeah, that's also really positive outcome of this. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I bet. But okay, so back to the technology. How do you actually enforce an idea like that using software? Or how do you
Uh,
guide?
we guide with Galapagos. If you create a topic, then you asked some questions first of all about the topic. So you directly have you notice that it's not good to just go with the data. So it's asking, for example, about your business capability you're trying to map here. So and most developers think in that second think, okay, wait a second, I have no idea what this means, and at least for the first topic they publish, and then okay, they get a workshop, and then okay, that's my business capability. Yeah, okay, understood. And then okay, what type of event did happen, and some other things. We also have some different types of topics. So we don't only have events, we have also master data topics, but that's really complicated. So topics where we publish master data, which does rarely change over time. For example, the list of all our logistics centers or something like that.
Okay, so like a standing data topic.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And which is really great to map with Kafka, as we have the log compaction there.
Yeah, of course.
And also with this distinction, they have the idea, okay, do I have an event or master data, standing data? Commands are also a possibility. And this does really get them onto the tracks in direction of events. But still, to be honest, of course, it happens that a team creates a topic which sounds like an event, has a name, because Galapagos also checks the name, but still not really is an event at the end of the day. And for that, we have still some kind of notification mechanism. We as architects get notified when new topics are created.
Oh, okay.
We don't have to do anything so we are not a quality gate. We can just let it go, but we also can check. Okay, that's a new team. We didn't have a workshop with them. Let's check. Okay, let's talk to them, because it's now in the development environment, and then we have still time to adjust things, and then we get into talk to them, and then usually they get the idea, and then it gets a new topic with better quality.
Okay, so you're also monitoring things as they evolve.
Yeah, exactly. It's a really asynchronous. It's just a Microsoft Teams notification, which is really great and lightweight. So
okay, is that is that dispatched by a topic? I have to ask.
Not directly, no.
Okay.
No, it's the event block of Galapagos, which is assigned to a Teams channel. Yeah.
Okay. So how many teams are we talking about, by the way? How many developers?
Developers are currently we have 50 developers being registered in Galapagos. We have 12 different application teams of 14 at Hermes dealing with software. So most of them already use Kafka and Galapagos at Hermes. At Otto, I just learned, our mother company, which also uses Galapagos, they plan to scale it up to 100 teams.
Oh, crikey. Okay, you've got to refine and perfect this software before you're scaling up to that size, right?
No, I'm confident that it will work fine for them.
Okay, good. Well, give me another example then. What's another thing it works on?
Sorry?
What's another thing that Galapagos does to keep people on the rails?
Well, okay, it enforces, as I said, the topic type, the naming schema, and we have a schema registry also. I know Confluent also has a schema registry, where we keep track of the JSON schemas for the data on the topic. So if you want to change it, you have to do it in a way which is consumer compatible. So, for example, that's one idea. To get a step back, one idea of event-driven architecture is also to decouple the teams, not only technically decouple them, but also to have them in the end no need to talk to each other. So if I, as a provider of data or of events, want to change something, I should do it in a way which does not kill the production applications which already read my data.
Yeah.
So this is also enforced by Galapagos. So if I publish a new schema, Galapagos checks that it's consumer compatible. For example, usually I can add new fields, and the existing applications just ignore these fields. But I cannot remove a previously required field, because an application could be relying on this field to exist, and then immediately stop working if I stop publishing this field. So this is also enforced by Galapagos. And also, so we cover the full topic lifecycle, because if I really, at the end of the day, have some changes which are so big I cannot do them in a consumer compatible way, I can also get rid of a topic by marking it as deprecated. But then I have to give an end of life date until when I will continue to provide data on this topic,
Mhm.
which must be at least 3 months in the future. And all my consumers get notification that it's now deprecated. So I have at least 3 months time to change to, for example, a successor of this topic. So all of this gets them in the idea of working decoupled from each other. So I don't have to. Previously, I have to go to all my consumers and talk to them. Hey, I want to change something. Are you ready for this? Let's do it on that date. Everyone has to change something on that date. And now it's completely decoupled. I can change at any time my topic. My consumers can adjust when they have time for this, and I can also get rid of my topic. And my consumers can then switch to a successor topic, for example.
Okay. And you're also introducing this idea of like an SLA for the data that people are publishing.
Yeah, some kind of SLA, exactly.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
you have to publish your data. You are, and that's also an idea we have to get in the minds of the teams. If you're a publisher, you are really responsible for a crucial point of our infrastructure. So don't just stop sending your data, because many critical systems rely on your data.
The idea of data as a product.
Exactly.
Yeah. Is this something you've picked up from the ideas around data mesh, or is it something you've discovered independently?
And to be honest, we discovered it. Yeah, we had the idea independently, exactly. So yeah, came from the other corner, so to speak, from the event-driven architecture, and then what does it have for effects on the teams and on the data. But yeah, I also learned the idea of data mesh, and the ideas from Confluent are really interesting and promising, and we'll keep an eye on this. And I think there can be one day perhaps some synergy effects there.
I think it's one of those ideas. Once you start thinking about immutable data, you're almost on an inevitable path to discover it or invent it, whether you take the fast route, stealing the idea from someone else, or you discover it on your own, right? Okay, that's interesting. So, and you've generally found the uptake on this has been good?
Yeah.
From different departments?
Yeah.
What kind of feedback have you been getting?
Well, one of the best feedbacks we got, and we got it twice, was, where did you buy Galapagos? Which company did create it? That was really nice feedback. And yeah, the teams are really happy because they get really quick access to Kafka. It's really low level, but still first positive impression. And yeah, they see the data they need. They really can easily find the data they need. And it's really easy to create new topics and so on. So I'm really happy because that's our overall goal, to have it as a self-service where the teams can really quickly get what they need. So that's also, we don't have, as I said, we have no quality gates there. We have to approve something or so, and they really get quickly what they need without asking someone, and that they really like this because this is exactly what they need in their sprints. To be able to just work on their goals.
Free them up to make things and free them up from coordinating with other departments.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. That's part of the ideal promise of using data to decouple things, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, what's been the business effect on Hermes moving to a kind of data-driven, event-driven architecture?
Well, we get the best thing is that we can really quickly implement new business ideas. So as we have the data available, every team which has a new idea just can take the related events from Kafka via Galapagos and just attach to it and implement a new business idea. And that's great because previously, we make a project and then, we have to involve this team and that team and the other team. And perhaps in 2 or 3 years, we have a new feature available.
Yeah.
And now we get things really quickly to the market. The time to market of new ideas has dramatically reduced by this. We had some ideas, for example, during the COVID-19 thing, we had the idea of having the drivers taking a photo of the signature of the customer when receiving a parcel, because previously they had to use the device of the driver and then they had the idea, hey, let's just take a photo because it's contactless, and then we attach the photo as a proof of that the customer got the parcel. And they also used Kafka for this, transporting this new information, and they had this from the idea to time to production in 2 weeks. And also because we had this infrastructure available.
That's
this
fast.
Was really helpful.
That is one sprint to actually put it in production.
Yeah, exactly.
That's nice, because it's an easy idea to have during a pandemic, but actually implementing it, when everything else is going on, that's impressive. Yeah. How large is Galapagos now? I mean, how many things does it cover?
In terms of,
I mean, the software you've got this. I mean, it's open source, right? It's an open source software project.
It's open source.
Is it just maintained by you, or is it a team of architects developing it?
We have a team of 2 to 3 developers. So no more. And we have contributors, but not that many. We are always happy to have new contributors. So it's not that big. It's a Spring Boot application and has an Angular front end, and it's still okay in size, let's say. So it's not a small tool, but also not really a huge tool where you need multiple servers to operate it. Also, it's just some Docker image which you can put in your Kubernetes cluster and runs really fine. So it's really still easy to operate, I think.
And it's open source, so other people can check this out and use it for their own systems.
Exactly, yeah. It's at GitHub available, and we have also a demo available, and we really have some users already, and we're happy.
Okay, so other companies are using it?
We only know from Otto. We had many questions from other companies, but we don't know yet if they really are using it in production already. So we haven't got feedback from them in the last months or so. But from Otto, we know that they are really using it and planning to use it on a big scale. And we have discussions in GitHub. So we are always happy to get feedback there. So discussions is a relatively new feature of GitHub where people can really interact with us and post questions, give feedback, and so on, which is really cool.
Okay, nice. We should send people there if they're interested in joining the project. We'll put a link in the show notes. But where do you see it going in the future?
Yeah, we plan to really have Galapagos even stronger integrated with Confluent Cloud. We are, for example, planning to use the Confluent Cloud schema registry instead of our own, and also want to offer more of the infrastructure of Confluent Cloud, for example, managed connectors and something like that, to have also available in Galapagos, that you can get it via one click.
Guiding people into using connectors as part of the managed system.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly, because this is where Hermes as a company wants to go. We want to use software as a service wherever possible. So instead of creating our own Kafka clients, wherever we can do it, we want to do it with managed software. For example, with a managed connector, with a KSQLDB, something like that. And this is all the infrastructure which we could perhaps also provide in Galapagos. This is one of the main ideas we have to go forward there, to integrate it even more there.
Do you use connectors much at the moment, self-managed?
Though we don't have any self-managed connectors at the moment. We only have managed connectors from Confluent.
Okay.
And we're still seeking ways to better integrate it even with the Google Cloud, because we as Hermes are in the Google Cloud.
Okay.
And we have already just today shared some ideas with our technical key accounter at Confluent how to get Confluent Cloud even better integrated with Google Cloud, so we get it even more seamless there. Because still currently the connectors are managed by Confluent and are in the Confluent Cloud, visible in the UI, but not in the Google Cloud. So we really have we have to create adapters, for example, for monitoring things and things like that.
I see. Yeah.
And this is where we can think of even better ways to integrate it so it's more seamless for our teams. But that's
Nice.
not directly Galapagos related, but our overall way forward.
So is Galapagos also going to take care of monitoring? Is it more just about setup?
No, that's not in the scope of Galapagos. Galapagos provides everything which you need for good monitoring, but monitoring itself is done outside of Galapagos, currently at least.
I see. So jumping back to the kind of social organization stuff, because it seems like the thrust of the technology here is about enabling people, right? So to jump back, you've been doing this for 3 years, right? Have you found what's been hard about getting people to move over to this kind of architecture?
Yeah, depends. Sometimes it's not hard at all, and sometimes it's really, if they're really used to some a special technology, then it's really hard to get them convinced that Kafka is now the better thing and that they can do better stuff with them. But it's mostly the two things mixed up there. It's a new technology and a new idea, the event-driven architecture and a new technology.
Yeah.
So this is usually we start with telling them about Kafka and why Kafka is great and all the ideas of Kafka with consumer groups and log compaction and so on. And they really get to that point quickly. If they see, okay, that's a good idea, that's really some advantages over, for example, JMS, then we get the next step and tell them about event-driven architecture. And then it's not that hard. It's possible. So we have really, now 12 or 14 teams which are using this happily. So I think we managed to convince them.
I wonder if the other two are listening to this.
Yeah, the one team is really in mobile applications, so they are not needing Kafka now currently. But
right.
Let's see. That's perhaps it's also coming up there. Let's see.
It's interesting that you, because I often wonder how you teach people this, that you start from the technology side and go up to the abstract ideas.
Yeah, it's maybe not a little bit unusual, but it's the best for our teams as they are really mainly developers and mainly focused on technology. So it's, catch them where they are.
And, yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah, because as architect, you always are suspicious that you have some high ideas in your tower, and there's nothing to do with their daily work. And so it's a good idea to tell them that we have an idea about the technology, and only then get to the higher ideas. So
right, yeah,
proven effectively.
Try and solve their problems first, and then build up to the larger picture. Yeah, okay, I can see that. Did you find it got easier the more teams you got on board?
Yes, definitely. We got used to it, and they could ask the other teams. So they are more trustworthy than we are. So they ask the other teams, "Hey, what are your ideas about this?" and so on. And yes, that worked good.
And what about the business side? Have the business people, as well as coming in on these event storming teams, how have they seen it evolve?
That is different from team to team. So we have some teams which we call competence teams. So something like this is more than DevOps. So it's DevOps with the business also inside. And in these teams, this was really, really an easy way forward. So the business was really happy to finally understand what's going on. So that was really good. And we have teams where business is really far away. And there we had sometimes the business attaching the workshops, but it's still a hard way forward there because they're really far away from the IT, and we still have to get them more involved. But we're working on this.
Gradually drawing them into your web.
Exactly.
Awesome. Well, it sounds like you've got your work cut out for you. If you're if you're growing into other branches of the parent company.
Sorry?
If you're growing into other branches of the parent company, Otto,
Yeah.
you're going to be busy.
Yeah, currently they created a fork of Galapagos and made some changes, so we don't have to provide them with new features currently, but they will give them back to us, the features, and we will have to integrate them. So that's really work for us, but I'm looking forward to this. And but yeah, that's the cool thing about open source. Everyone can use it, and we can provide them with support, but we don't have to.
Yeah. So
And this is why it's still manageable.
if someone wanted to get started with Galapagos, or at least kick the tires on it, where's the best place to start?
Definitely the GitHub page of Galapagos. We have also the theory behind as some documents there. So the principles of event-driven architecture and our derived Kafka rules and guidelines. So that's just ideas, and you can implement them even without having to use Galapagos. That's just ideas, and we intentionally formulated them in a way that you could do it without software, but you quickly will see it's better to do it with software. And
especially if someone's written it for you.
Especially, exactly. It's available for free. And yeah, then the next step would be to check out Galapagos and you start the demo. There's a demo attached, and you can try it out locally. And yeah, then see what it can do. But I really think it's not the kind of software which you just download and start and see, oh great, that's the kind of thing it can do, because you have to have an idea at least about what it's doing. So you should be familiar with the concepts of event-driven architecture, because otherwise you'll ask the same questions like a developer. What is this business capability kind of stuff and something like that?
Yeah.
So better have a look into the principles and then start the demo.
Right. Are there any principles we haven't covered in this conversation that you want to bring up?
Yeah. There are many.
Oh gosh. Okay.
But too many perhaps to cover here. It's not that many. But one of the principles perhaps which we created for us is that a topic always has one owner assigned. So one application is the owner of one topic. And there can be multiple producers for a topic. That's fine. But we said there must always be one team, one application, which is responsible for the topic itself, for the format of the data. And there can be multiple producers, but they have to coordinate then with the producer, with the owner, if they want to change something. This is a little bit controversial sometimes for other companies. But that's we found is the best way to organize it, to have always one team responsible for a topic. Because otherwise, yeah, if you have multiple responsibles, then no one is responsible at all.
Yeah. And again, you've just cracked back open that coordination problem.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And one other principle is that we have one business event type per topic. So we don't have topics where you have dozens of different event types, but always only one business event type for one topic. This is also a little bit controversial. We had a company which wanted it in the other way around, or multiple event types per topic. And I think in their case, it could be okay to do it this way. So Galapagos does not really enforce this. Galapagos only says you have to provide one JSON schema, and if you get multiple event types covered with your one JSON schema, then it's technically fine.
Right.
But we have this principle for us on the logical layer to say there's only one business event type per topic, because this makes many things much easier, much more transparent, and easier to visualize, for example, in our architecture software.
Right.
Because otherwise you cannot easily split. For example, if you say the responsibility for this business event changes from one team to the other team, then yeah, I just said we have just one owner for the topic, but now we have two different responsibilities for the contents, and that's a really bad idea. So it's easier to have it, distinct. So one business event type per topic.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with that, because if you've got two events on the same topic and different teams are responsible for them, they're really different events, aren't they? They're really different topics, different sources of data.
Exactly.
Yeah. Any other principles?
No, I think that's the most important principles. There are some minor things, but yeah, I think that's best to read them. Yeah.
And do you have this idea, just to hammer it home, the idea of the team that owns a topic? Are they also responsible for fixing the data and quality levels and
Yeah,
uptime on that topic?
they are responsible, exactly. Of course, they really, for example, for the data quality, they sometimes have to talk to business or somebody else, but they are really responsible in the end. So if a consuming team has a problem with the data, be it data missing or data, bad quality or whatever, it will go to the responsible team, which can see via Galapagos, okay, this is a responsible team, I will contact them and report whatever problem there is, and they have to fix it, exactly.
Do you know what this is making me think? There are some things, there are some ideas that seem almost inevitable when you settle on certain principles. The ideas that follow from them are kind of inevitable. So I think if you start with immutable data structures, you're going to eventually discover event-driven architectures, and you're going to eventually, in a large enough organization, do something like data mesh. Is the choice of principles causing evolution related to the choice of the name Galapagos? Is that deliberate or just a nice
That's a
coincidence?
nice idea. It really is related to evolution, but the name derives from the first core of the application, which was the schema registry, and the idea of having JSON schemas which are compatible to the previous version. And this idea is not new, but it's called schema evolution. So it's schema,
Right.
and that's what we call why we call it Galapagos, and because we like island names for, for software. But to be honest, it should always be only a temporary name, but then it somehow got final.
That often happens with project names.
And,
It's a very interesting project. I'm going to go and check out the repo, and I hope some other people will do too.
Yeah.
Thanks for telling us about it, Florian.
You're welcome. Thank you for your time.
Well, thank you, Florian. You know, I'm quite gratified that every time we've had an architect on this podcast, they've shunned that classic stereotype about being the kind of person that lives in an ivory tower with their ideas. And they've actually got stuck in with the kind of tools and training and conversations that make these ideas work in the real world. So, Florian, thank you for being one of the good ones. Before we go, Streaming Audio is brought to you by Confluent Developer, which is our site that teaches you everything you need to know about Apache Kafka and real-time event systems in general. We've got tutorials, we've got architectural guides, we've got courses that will teach you everything you need to know. So take a look at developer.confluent.io. And if you want to get your own Kafka cluster up and running to build your very own data mesh, take a look at our cloud service at confluent.cloud. You can sign up and have Kafka running reliably in minutes, and if you add the code podcast100 to your account, you'll get some extra free credit to run with a little longer. And with that, it remains for me to thank Florian Albrecht for joining us and you for listening. I've been your host, Kris Jenkins, and I will catch you next time.